Hey everybody, in this video we're going to go over how to paint these beautiful cascading roses on the vine, and they're just so many pretty colors in them, and we'll have a lot of fun doing it, so stay tuned. To start with, I'm going to tone my canvas with sap green and a little bit of alizarin and the transparent oxide red. Maybe a little viridian too. And I'm just going to pretty much tone it. No special rhyme or reason. Just get the color on there. I usually use the biggest brush I've got for this. And there's really, like I said, there's no rhyme or reason on how I'm putting it on there. I'm just trying to get it onto the canvas at this point. And it's not as dark as it's going to absolutely be. I'll save that for later. I will put in, once I get the sketch in and figure out exactly where I need my darks, we'll take care of that. I'm going to get a little bit of terp on my paper towel. Just spread the love here a little bit. I like all these random strokes like this with the paper towel. I try to leave some of that in there. It just puts in an element that you probably wouldn't already put in there to begin with. And so I like the randomness. Just get it pretty much covered. Okay, that's good enough. All right, and some people, they'll go to painstaking, lengths of trying to make it all smoothed out and everything. Don't bother with that. It's actually better when you don't do that, because you have all these just random things going on. In case any of that shows through, the underpainting shows through, then that's pretty cool. You got all these random strokes going on in there. Otherwise, it's kind of boring. Now, I am going to get just a medium-sized brush. And I'm going to try to figure out exactly where I want these elements to lie. Now, I'm going to leave this pile here for now, I think. I'm going to scooch over here. I'm just picking up a color. It's really no specific color. People are always asking me, what color is that? How'd you mix that color? Don't worry about that. Okay. My focal point is going to be in this area here. I am just kind of laying in some markers. I am not by any means being exact right now. I may move some of this stuff around. We just got to see where everything's going to work. I may not even put all these flowers in. You just have to see sometimes what's going to work for you and take it from there. Okay, so I want to get the width, the breadth of this in. I want to make sure that some of that's getting all in there. And a lot of times when we start placing things like this, we might have to have a few attempts to get everything in the composition just right. And that's okay. Do it while you can. Don't, that's the best, to do it as early as you can, no matter when that is, just as early as you can. want that to come about out through here. And I know this one's going to go off of the page. Let's see here. I may have this one go off up here too later on. I'm not sure yet. And then there's a little, okay, it needs to move more up here. Let's see, that one's going to go in this region. And then these are too similar here. I think this needs a little more width over here. It needs to come down, and I think there needs to be another, we'll put that other little element in there. I don't know, we'll see. And then there's one off over here. All right, and then there's some back in the background back in here. That might be enough to do the trick. I think I might move this up a bit. Okay, and another way you can check, now on flowers you have way more freedom to move things around and do stuff just because, you know, they're flowers. It's not like doing a face. But if you want it exactly, you know, well, I don't want to say exactly, because I always tell my students, you're not going to sit here and copy every little flower. That's silly to try to even do that. You're trying to get the character of the flowers in the petals that are going on here. But if you're wanting a certain composition and want to stick with that composition, look at the negative spaces too. When you're trying to lay this all out, look at, you know, measure the distances. Now, I don't mean, you know, you don't have to get a ruler out or anything like that, but just compare what's going on, you know, in these areas. And, you know, feel free to move about the cabin. This needs a little more space in here. And this is actually up here. See how you gotta just go back in, and I'm revisiting some of these flowers. And this actually comes down lower into here. Okay, that'll work. I'll bring this down some in through here. I don't want these to be even Steven here. So I'm going to bring this down just a bit more down through here, and I'll bring this edge up. So now I'm going to take a fairly large brush. I'm going to take my transparent colors, alizarin crimson. You can either use burnt sienna, transparent oxide brown, or transparent oxide red is what I have here today. They're all pretty much the same color. They may react a little bit differently than, you know, different brands or different versions of it, but that's all fine and good. I'm making a dark value. I'm going to go in now and start placing some of the dark values, the dark shapes. I am trying to reduce down all of the large shapes. I try to simplify that shape. How simple can I make that shape? That's what the name of the game is. And as I do this, I'm refining some of this, you know, the edges here. And they're by no means in a completed state when I do this. I am just, the whole painting, you're just working towards refining it. That doesn't mean that that I won't go back and adjust this, but I absolutely will go back and adjust. But when I squint down, these are the largest dark shapes that I'm seeing here. And you can also, if you have trouble seeing your dark shapes, dark values, and things like that, a very good way to do that is to go to the app Notanizer, as in Notan, and you want to take a picture. You have a photograph you're already working from, and then go in and pull up that picture within that app and change it to a 4-value note or a value type picture. And it will break it down for you, and you can adjust it. That's why I like this one. You can go in and adjust those values however you like to see them, either darker or lighter. You can actually go in and make it a Notan, which is 2-color, dark and light, that's it. Or you can go in and put it 2 or a 3-level, 4-level, or just a black and white. There's all different kinds of things you can do. Okay, I need to speed this up. This is all in here. The format of my photo here is a little bit different than my canvas. So I'm going to end up with a little extra space. It's going to be a little wider, but that's fine. It's not a problem. Okay, there's darkness up under here. And I am, actually the photo, whenever I was doing this, all of this green was pretty much the same level. I went in and adjusted the darkness and the contrast within it and made the dark areas even darker. So it gave me a few different levels of all of these greens in here. Gave me some deep, deep greens, which are real pretty. And depending on the size, that you make it, depends on how much paint you're going to have to put out. And don't spend so much time really on this stage here. This is just the mosaic stage. I'm just trying to cover the canvas at this point. I was just trying to lay in some of those darks to give me an idea of which direction I'm going with that. But there's plenty of time to go back in and make adjustments. This just helps me judge my values when I go in to lay in the other values. And I call it mosaic because we're basically putting down these blocks of values that will be refined later on, so not to worry about that. Okay, I'm going to paint with this hand since I don't want to block the camera. Now, if I had to do detail, I certainly couldn't paint with this hand. There's been occasions where I'll put a brush in both hands. Gives more spontaneity that way and looseness. That's my darkest darks. Now the next value, which will be when you squint down, that's how you see your values. That's how you can see them a little more clearly. But what you want to do is you put in the next value shape. Now, you don't necessarily have to get it the exact color right off the bat. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. Go in now and put in the next value, which I'm going to go ahead and bend. I'm going to make a value here first. Make the value. It's a little too bright. Add some blue. And let's see. Okay. It's actually a warm kind of color. This was very ambient light when I took this photograph. Now up in here, it's a kind of a purpley warm kind of color. And so I'm squinting down, and I'm laying in, I'm trying to make that shape as simple as possible. And you do that by squinting. You don't want to squint so hard where you can't see it, but it simplifies the shape. You lose the details when you do that, and it makes it easier to see the larger shape in which you need to paint. I'm trying to make this so simplified. I don't want any of the details, and even if there are some details in there, I'm going to totally ignore them right now at this point. Because the details, if I got bogged down in that right now, it just ruined the painting. And that's what a lot of people, when they first start out painting, that's what they'll do. And I know that's hard to not do. Because that's the fun stuff, we want to get right at it and do all that fun stuff. But we have to refrain from doing it right away. We have to hold off on that. Let's see. It's a little too light. And see, test it. I wasn't quite sure if that was going to be the right color or not. Right value, mainly. And so I go in and test it. There's nothing wrong with testing. See? Well, that's still too light. All right, let's darken that puppy up. I don't think I'm going to bring in some of that right there. There we go. All right. And anything that's supposed to be in the shadows needs to remain in those shadows. If you go and start getting it too bright, it's going to pop out of those shadows, and it's not going to be what you're wanting. It's just going to ruin the painting if it's, coming out of the shadows where it's not supposed to be. Okay. And let's see, there's some over in here. And later on, right now, I don't want you to think that you're painting flowers. You're painting shapes. I'm not looking at things in terms of petals or anything such as that. These are all just shapes to me right now. You don't ever want to get too detailed and think of things in terms of like I'm painting a flower. I don't, it'll turn out looking like a flower if I paint all the value shapes correctly. So don't get caught up in that, because that will ruin a painting quicker than you can say boo. Okay, that's a little too green. Let's put some of that back in. We need a little more. And see, you always mix the colors here. Try to refrain from mixing them up here on the canvas. I don't want to get caught up in mixing on the canvas, because then you lose the color that you just spent all the time mixing. It don't work. Anytime you need to blend, you do it on the palette. Okay, this need more. Go here. And I usually have to wear readers to read. So right now, instead of squinting, I just don't even have my glasses on. Which, makes it a little uncomfortable, but I still need to bring this one down here. But, back to the readers. It helps you to see it without having to squint, basically. You see the basic shapes, depending on how blind you are. Mine are just readers from the drugstore. Okay, let's see here. Goes over in here. There's a spot right in there. Need to I'm bringing a little bit of the green in that area that needs to come in a bit there. And like I said, don't worry so much about getting everything exact at this point. We're not worried about that right now. I'm just trying to, each little phase that you go through, you're perfecting the drawing. So you're basically, the entire time you're painting, you're constantly drawing. And you're doing that by just coming in around the edges and, coming in little areas. This is what I was wanting to do. You're perfecting by every time you kind of, start cutting in a little bit. Let's see, I want that to go away. And come in a little more there. Okay, this got lost here. Okay, and then what I like to do is sometimes I'll lay it in, and then I come back with a paper towel, and a lot of this I've done intentionally because this helps bring in that background into the edges and gives it very, you can make some really, really cool edges. So that's why I kind of distorted this down in here so I can come back in and see how that really gives it a neat, unique thing you can't really do with the paper towel. What am I saying? It makes a really unique stroke that you really can't do with a brush. You can only do it with a paper towel. And see, I don't want it to look cut in like that. It's got to look very soft and ethereal type look. I don't want hard edges in a lot of these areas. So I go back in. I'll have that value laying in there waiting for that flower to appear. But I'm not going to worry so much with trying to make it perfect yet. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put in this lighter value simply by wiping out. See how that works? I'm going to just pull out a couple little areas. And that needs to, got a little too much there. Now everything you do should help to bring it to, a better form of completion, but you're not going to make everything perfect right away. It just ain't going to happen. There's some lightness in here. Now, as I go, I will be, putting on my glasses and getting a little more perfect. That's in later stages of the painting. I'm just trying to get the value shapes in right now, going in the right direction. Okay, and and there's some right in there here. And depending on how much turp you have on the paper towel or on your brush, depends on how much of it's going to wipe out. And you can create values actually with this. If there's no turp on it, it's just going to barely wipe out some. If there's a lot, then, you know, it's going to bring it back down to that white canvas. So use that to your advantage. If it takes out too much, just go back and put it in. Okay. And there's something here. This is not quite as white though. I'm going to use an area of my paper towel that doesn't have quite so much turp on it. It's got a little bit, but nothing like it was a while ago on the other parts of it. All right, and there's some little areas in here. And sometimes I like to, you know, I'll go in and I might even go back in and put like alizarin crimson in here and stain the canvas a little bit, and then go back in and wipe out. And that helps give those really nice little strokes to it without even really having to paint them in. You're just kind of wiping them out. And this needs more. That's what I didn't finish this out a while ago. Okay. No, I know what I'm doing. Okay. And I don't want this to be a poof ball looking like a big cotton ball or something. It has to have some interest to it. And even if you are painting, you know, an object that tends to lean itself towards looking like a poof ball, you know, you got to find areas to change that up. Got to do it, or else it's going to look goofy, and you're not going to be happy with it. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to go back to this other value. So I've got this value in here, this, and I'm working towards the midtones, and I have this light value, and then I have this I really haven't done anything with because that's the toning of the canvas. And you know, sometimes you can leave it, you know, that tone and let that work for itself. I'm gonna lighten the value just a little bit though, and I haven't added any white until just now. Once you get to the mid-tones and work towards the higher tones, then you can start adding a little bit of white. Do not overdo it. Okay? Do not. That's a no-no. And I usually do not have black on my palette because it will also take over just like white will. And it cools down things immensely. So try to stay away from using a whole lot of white or any black. Because with these transparent colors right here, like the alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, and ultramarine blue, and even that, the sap green, anything that's transparent, the darker things, you can make a really nice dark, deep color. There's some nice colors you can make with that, and it really, you can tell, somebody may not be able to put their finger on it exactly what's going on in your painting, but there's going to be an element to it. It's going to be a lot more appealing and pleasing to the eye if you can do that and keep away from adding black and just using those dark transparents. Okay, I'm still just trying to put in some midtones. There's different color variations. Now these flowers actually were very, very bright pink, and you know, sometimes it doesn't translate well in a painting, and it were really a little more pink than I wanted. And so I really toned them down in the photograph. And so I wanted these to be just subtle little blushes of color. I didn't want something so harsh, because I've done paintings in the past and I just wasn't pleased with what they turn out to look like whenever they're, you know, very huge, bold, vibrant colors right in your face, even though that's exactly what was going on, you know. That's what the painting was doing. But to me, it was kind of unrealistic, and I didn't like it. So I have pretty much stayed away from that. Oh, there's fireworks. This is actually New Year's Eve. Okay, I'm going to pick up some of these. There's some more mid-tones in here I need to work in. Now, if you want, you know, you can watch this video and then wait for the next one to come out and paint everything a la prima, which means all in one sitting, or, you know, wet on wet. That's up to you. You know, you can definitely do this mosaic stage like I'm going to be doing today, and then come back and even after it's dry, you know, it's up to you. And when you pick it up again, you can go in and you can either, if it's not completely dry, you can add some spray. It's like a retouch varnish. You can do that to bring it back up to a level to where it'll still be kind of wet on wet. Or if it's completely dry, then you can use linseed oil and wipe over the entire thing. But it has to be dry if you're going to do that. Otherwise, you're going to smear everything in the painting. Got it? I hope so. Okay. And one thing you always want to be doing too is stepping away from your painting. Get up from, if you're sitting, get up from it and make sure you see it from across the room every now and then, because, you know, you tend to take on a different viewpoint when you get up from it than if you were right on top of it. And then we need to see it from all angles. We need to see what it's going to look like when you have it hanging on the gallery wall or at someone's home, and make sure that that is what you intended. Because you'll be very surprised sometimes at what's going on in your paintings when you did not plan for that. Sometimes they're good surprises, sometimes they're not. Okay, and I still need to work in another, it's not the darkest dark, but it didn't get quite the value I wanted in here. I'm trying to get that depth. All right. And then two, notice that your paintings will dry darker. Depending on the paint that you use, you're going to have different drying times. Different brands are little different. So you got to work with that and pay attention to that and see what it's going to do. Some of them will dry really, really dark, and some of them don't at all. You know, who knows? I don't know if there's a difference between batches too of paint when they mix it. Sometimes I think that might be one aspect of it. And I know I'm bouncing around all over the place, but that's kind of the way I paint. Okay, I need a little more pink right in there. And I'm going to reserve probably any really bright pinks until the end of the painting, because like I mentioned a while ago, some of them get a little too too bright for me. And I think it's way more beautiful when you have such tight values and colors than to get too bright with it. And two, it can still be pulled off and used in certain areas and certain doses, but you don't want to overdo it. And so I think it's just really best to hold off on that until, you know, you're towards the end of your painting. Oh, now we have a police car. Did somebody already have problems here on New Year's Eve? Goodness. Put in some of these values here. Okay. And I need some more color in here. I have that value in there. I need to squint down some more and put a little bit lighter value right in there. And sometimes instead of grabbing the white, you can, like this Portland warm gray could do the trick. See how that lightens that up to another value? And that could be everything that you need it to do without going, you know, heavy into white. Let's see. I need to just focus on a flower and stay there. And I'm still not putting details in. I'm still just really putting in the larger shape. Get another brush for a little bit darker value here. Okay. And a little bit there. And there's actually a little bit of green up in here. Up underneath in that, where that darkness comes through. Okay, that's a little bit bright for that area, but I'm gonna let it ride for right now. I'm gonna worry about it. All right. And these colors, I'm just barely touching the edge of my brush into it. I don't want to. I think one of the biggest mistakes I see my students make that are new to painting, they see me dip into a color and they just go, you know, or some of them do. Some of them don't even put any paint out at all. And that, you know, you can't paint without putting paint out. You've got to have some paint on your can or on your palette to paint. You can't expect to paint a painting without paint. And see, I'm just focusing on these shapes that are going on in here with the different values. And like I said, once it all starts coming together, it will say flowers. If you hang in there and stay true to what's going on. And there's going to be a point where you get in there and there's an ugly part to your painting process. You got to hang in through that. Sometimes it's like you take a glimpse at it and it's like, what the heck is going on? Work through it. Don't give up. You got to hang in there. Actually, that's all part of the dark. There's something going on there. I don't know what that is. Okay. And I'm still squinting down at this point. I'm still trying to get the value shapes in as big as possible. Let's see, I'm looking at the negative shape here too. Like this area in here. And that's one thing too. You want to make sure you have variety in those edges and those negative shapes as well. You don't want anything to look like a pattern going on and look a little too, I don't know, matchy poo-poo, should I say? Because then it will not look right. Okay, and there's an area here I want to bring back in. I want to bring that up a little bit. See, you find ways to change up those shapes a little bit if you need to make it all work. So you can kind of cut in with the edges if you need to. All right, I need to continue this one here. What does this need? This needs a little bit of a lighter version right in here. Okay, and now I'm going to work on this. This is kind of a gray color down in here. And just because that's nothing, you know, just because you're painting pink flowers does not mean that that's what every single stroke is going to consist of, is pink. There's going to be areas that are going to look, you know, like, what the heck? How is this color even in this flower? Let's test that. That looks good. Okay, and so they just have to relate to each other correctly. Now, and it's the values, it's not necessarily the color. You know, I'm constantly telling my students that. And I know that's a hard thing to get your head around. I know. Because I was there. Believe me. I had to kind of I heard that for years, but I kind of had to just figure this out on my own. And there was one time I was learning, I was studying this artist's work, and they started kind of doing these value shapes, and I was like, it just clicked all of a sudden. It's like, what the heck? I've heard this all my painting life, and it never clicked until then. Everybody has a moment, if you stay with it long enough, everybody has a moment. It's going to all fall into place. Not all, but it'll start falling into place. You know, we're all at different places in our journey here. And that's what it is. It is a journey. And you can't expect to put all that information in your head all in 1 or 2, 3 months or a year even. You've got to allow certain things to settle in, get acquainted with what that whole process is, take that on, and then, okay, once you okay, I got this part, now what? And start just adding things to your skill set. You can't do everything all at once, nor should you. You've got to just take a little at a time, get very familiar with that, and you're not necessarily going to master it right away. We all are trying to do that, you know. But you've got to learn to just take a little on at a time. And when you take a workshop, you know, if you learn just a couple of things that you can take away from that workshop that you learned, you have had a very successful workshop. Don't think that you're going to go away acing it, you know, after that. It's usually actually the opposite effect. because we go into these workshops and we think, oh yeah, I want to paint just like this person. And then we go in there and we come out, and it's happened to me many times before, and a lot of people I know. You go in and you come out of it, and then you think, what the heck just happened? And you act like, you feel like you've never even, you look as if you've never even painted before. And it's like, what is going on? I know I can paint. I could paint before I took this workshop, but it's because you're trying to copy. You're trying to copy that person, and you don't want to do that. You want to take in a few, things that you learned and add them to your skill set. But if you're just there to copy somebody, you're taking the workshop for the wrong reason. And that is one of the best pieces of advice I can give you, because you are you. You're not going to, your hand dips into that paint a little differently than other people's, and mine does too. And nobody's going to do it exactly like you do it, nor should they. But you need to just allow yourself to have your style come out. Everybody has their own style, and we can't fight it. I had this one student I'm always referring back to, that she was more a colorist than anything. She wanted to paint just like me. And I finally, I told her several times, but she finally just quit fighting it. And I said, this is your style. Don't fight it. Now, yes, you can, learn different things and add them to what it is that you've learned through the years. But this is you. Don't fight that. You're not going to paint just like everybody else. You need to let it come out. That's just what came out in her. And her problem though was that she needed to work on composition. That was her whole battle. And I was constantly trying to tell her that, and she didn't really realize that. And so finally, she finally started going with it and just letting it come through, and she stops fighting it now, and her paintings are a lot better. More natural. Before, they looked forced and, contrived and just didn't work. And she was frustrated, and so there's a lot to be said about trying to just let things happen. Yes, we need to learn to constantly better our skills and do things like that, but it doesn't help to get so flustered. I always tell my students, you want to be uncomfortable, because that means you're learning, but you don't want to get so just miserable and frustrated. So allow yourself to get uncomfortable. That's one of the best things you can do for yourself. Allow yourself to be, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit of lighter green to this up here. And two, it's always best to err on the side of darkness than making something too light. You can always go back and darken or lighten a dark, but not darken a light as easy. I'm not saying you can't, but it's easier to go back and lighten up a dark. So give yourself some leeway in doing that. And I'm just trying to, this is a weird color in here. Who knows what that color is? I'm just trying to get the right value. I'll worry about color later. Okay, and I am getting close to getting this mosaic in. And then I'm going to leave this because I have to, unfortunately for this painting, I am not going to be able to sit here and do this in one session. I really wish I could, but I've got to leave town tomorrow. And so, and you know, life happens. So we all have to make allowances for things like that, but we have to plan around that too. So that's going to be fine as long as I, you know, get to a certain stopping point that I know will be easy to pick back up from me when the time comes to work on this again. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you do your paintings. Make it a good natural stopping point for it. Okay, there's a little spot in, oh, let me use this one. There's a spot in there that I really want to, this is the focal point right here. I want to make sure that's in. And see, now, I'm just now starting to really get particular with some of that. And see how that starts to, I'm not really ready for that stage yet, but I want to mentally be able to come back to this with good thoughts on how I want to, what direction I want this to go. These are kind of like notes for myself for the next time I need to actually come back a little bit further back in here. And see, I'm leaving little notes for my future self. See, be kind to yourself. And I still have not put my glasses on. I know there's some little stuff going on right in there, but I'm not going to fuss with that too much yet. I just want that larger, big shape in there. And it's very dark in here. And actually, I want to get it a little darker. Adding alizarin crimson to sap green. Ooh, you can make some really cool dark greens in there like that. I'm adding a little bit of the blue just to really go deep. There we go. Now too, unfortunately, when having to come back to this at a later date, I'm not going to be able to put things in and wipe them out. You know, they're going to be dry. So any kind of areas you think that you want to maybe do some wiping out, just leave them. Don't do them yet, because you can always go back and do that at the next session. Because if, like here, there's areas of lights and like, I need a paper towel that doesn't have turp on it. See how that doesn't have turp on it, so it doesn't take off as much. There's these leaves all in through here that I want to pull out those colors a little bit. Now, if I didn't have this totally covered, then I could more easily go back and do that whenever I come back to paint again. But if it's in an area that I think I want to, like, no, that's too much. If it's in an area that I want to have that technique and be able to do something like that, you really need to try to, what am I trying to say? You know, it's really hard painting and talking at the same time. Okay. What was I saying? Okay. When you want to leave an area to where you can pull out these things from that wet paint, then don't even paint that area until you know you're going to be able to do it. And if there's an area you think, oh, I really want to do that up in here, or what, I would probably go ahead and wipe that area out and make it to where you can go back in and do that on the next session, because you won't be able to do it like you are at this point. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay. So if there's sharp edges you leave, then you're going to be left with the sharp edges whenever you come back at doing the painting. So make sure whatever you do leave is something you want to come back to, and you're fine with it. See, like up in these areas that I may not want, it's away from my focal point, so I may not want just real sharp edges in some of those places. Let's see. And some of these areas, they're not as dark as some of these others, but they're not as light as some of these. So I'm going to just pull some of that out just a little bit. It's stained with the color of the canvas, or the tinting of the paint, which is, I like that. And I'll just pull some of those little areas out. And if I want them darker, I can always go back in when I come back to my painting and make them darker. Okay, this area here, there's a little bit of one flower here going off the page. I'll put that in a little bit. And there's one, actually it looks a little, maybe it's just because it's in shadow, it looks a little purple to me. I'm going to go ahead and put that in, back up in here, but it needs to be darker. It needs to be in the range, the right value. I don't want that to be flying forward into the foreground if it's something that's in the background. So let's do that with just a little bit. I'm going to make it even darker. All right, let's go back in. There's some darkness up underneath it. There we go. I'm just kind of putting a placeholder in for it right now. I don't know how much of that I'll actually show. And then this one here is actually a little bit on the purple side too. It's very faint. Doesn't have a lot of color going on in there. Okay, I think we are done for now. So stay tuned for the next phase.